The arena was silent, filled with thousands of people holding their breath. The ground shook as the alien warrior stepped forward, his tall body covered in shining armor, his eyes glowing with strange fire. He was a champion from a distant world, known for crushing enemies with a single strike. To him, humans were nothing but fragile creatures, weak and easy to break. The alien raised his weapon, a massive blade that hummed with energy. He laughed loudly, his voice echoing through the walls of the arena. Is this the planet that dares to call itself strong? He mocked, his words sharp like knives. The crowd felt fear, but also a strange hope, for they knew one human had accepted this challenge. From the other side of the arena, the human challenger walked slowly. He was not tall, not dressed in armor, and carried no weapon. He looked ordinary, like any man you might see walking on the street. But there was something in his calm steps, something in his steady eyes, that made the air feel heavy. The alien narrowed his eyes, confused and almost insulted. "This is your champion?" he growled, pointing his blade toward the human. "He will not last a second against me." But the human did not speak. He only stood in silence, watching the alien with a gaze that felt unshakable. The crowd whispered among themselves, fear mixing with excitement. They did not know the man's name, but they could feel something strange around him. It was as if the air itself moved when he breathed. The alien could sense it too, though he tried to ignore the chill crawling down his spine. Finally, the horn sounded, announcing the beginning of the duel. The alien roared and charged forward, his massive feet cracking the stone floor beneath him. Every step felt like thunder, every movement filled with raw power. The crowd screamed, expecting the human to run, to hide, to fall in fear. But the human did not move. He stood still, his eyes locked on the alien, his body calm, his hands loose at his side. The alien's blade came down, glowing with energy and filled with killing intent. At the last second, something invisible stopped it. The weapon froze in midair, unable to touch the human. The alien gasped, his eyes wide in disbelief. He pushed harder, muscles bulging, but the blade refused to move closer. It felt like an invisible wall of pure force was holding him back. The crowd erupted in shock, their fear turning into wild cries of surprise. The human finally raised his hand, slowly, without effort, with a simple wave. The alien was pushed back, his heavy body sliding across the arena floor as if struck by a storm. The warrior roared in anger, his pride burning. He had never been thrown aside without being touched. For the first time, the alien felt something he did not understand: fear. He stood again, his blade shaking in his grip, his eyes locked on the human who had not even broken a sweat. The human's calm voice finally spoke, soft but heavy. "You think strength is only muscle and steel, but you are wrong." The alien growled, refusing to accept such humiliation. He slammed his blade against the ground, sending sparks of energy across the floor. "I will break your mind as easily as your bones," he shouted, charging again. But deep inside, a question burned in his mind. What power did this human truly hold? The crowd could not look away, their hearts racing. They had seen wars, weapons, and blood before, but this was something else. This was a battle of the unknown, a clash between raw muscle and unseen force. The human's psychic aura was growing, invisible waves bending the air, cracking the stones, and filling the arena with pressure. The alien slowed his steps, confused by the invisible storm pressing against his chest. He felt as if the human's eyes were inside his thoughts, pulling his secrets out. For the first time in countless battles, the champion realized he might not win. But pride forced him forward, unwilling to surrender. The human only waited, calm, steady, silent. His mind was like a mountain, unmoved by storms, unshaken by power. He did not fight for glory or for pride. He fought because humanity's strength needed to be shown. The alien's roar filled the arena, but deep in the silence of the human's gaze, a greater roar was waiting to be released. The battle had only begun, and already the alien warrior was no longer laughing. The crowd sensed it, the tension, the mystery, the suspense. Something unseen, something powerful, was about to change the meaning of the fight forever. The alien warrior steadied himself, his chest rising and falling with anger. He had never been thrown back like that, not by any enemy, and certainly not by a human. His pride burned hotter than the energy blade in his hand. The crowd waited, their eyes locked on every movement, the air thick with silence. He charged again, his steps cracking the stone floor, each stomp like thunder. This time, he moved faster, his armor glowing brighter, his blade raised high. He swung with a roar that echoed like a storm, his strike heavy enough to split mountains. The crowd gasped, certain that this blow would end the human in a single instant. But the human did not run. He did not lift a weapon. He only lifted his hand. A wave of invisible force pulsed out, like air turned solid, like thought turned into stone. The alien's mighty blade stopped just short of the human's head, frozen in midair. The ground beneath cracked from the force, but the man stood untouched, calm as the sea. The alien roared, pushing harder, his muscles straining, veins glowing with alien fire. But no matter how hard he pushed, the blade refused to move closer. The human's eyes narrowed, and with a simple flick of his wrist, the alien was hurled backward again. The warrior crashed into the arena wall, the stone breaking around his armored body. The crowd erupted in shock, their voices rising like waves. Some shouted in fear, others in awe, but all of them knew they were watching something impossible. The alien warrior stood again, slower this time, anger mixing with confusion. He could not understand how a man without armor, without weapons, could repel his strength so easily. "You fight with muscle," the human finally spoke, his voice calm but heavy. "But I fight with mind." The words cut deep, sharper than any blade. The alien spat on the floor, his pride refusing to bow. "You hide behind tricks, behind illusions. Face me with real strength," he growled. The human tilted his head slightly, as if pitying the warrior. He stretched out his hand again, and the alien felt the air shift. His body grew heavier, like invisible chains pulling him down. Each step became harder, each breath more difficult, as if gravity itself had betrayed him. The alien roared, his fury shaking the arena. He slammed his blade against the ground, sending sparks of alien energy flying. The force cracked through the invisible bonds, freeing him for a moment. With a scream, he leapt forward, swinging his weapon with all his might. The human's eyes glowed faintly, his focus unbroken. The blade stopped again, locked in place. But this time the human did not push him back. Instead, he reached deeper into the warrior's mind. The alien staggered, his vision flickering, his thoughts suddenly exposed. He saw flashes of memory, battles fought across galaxies, victories piled upon victories. But beneath them, hidden in shadows, was fear. Fear of something his people had whispered about for centuries. Fear of humanity's hidden power, the one strength they could never understand. The alien growled, shaking his head, trying to push the human out of his mind. But the intrusion had already cracked his confidence. He swung wildly, desperate to land a blow, his movements faster, more reckless. The human stepped aside with ease, never rushing, never panicking. The crowd leaned forward, hearts pounding. They had thought this would be a one-sided slaughter, but now they watched the impossible unfold. The alien warrior, undefeated champion, was being toyed with by a single unarmed man. It was no longer a fight of strength. It was a battle of belief. The alien stumbled, his blade dragging against the floor. His chest heaved with exhaustion, his pride bleeding through every gasp. He looked at the human, standing untouched, calm, still waiting. The truth he had denied was now burning in his mind. This was not weakness. This was a new kind of power. For the first time in his life, the alien felt uncertain. The audience could see it in his trembling hands, in the way his eyes darted with doubt. The human's voice echoed again, soft yet unshakable. Strength of the body fades, but strength of the mind grows forever. The alien's heart raged. His pride demanded he strike again. But his body, his soul, his very spirit hesitated. The first clash was over, and the warrior knew the truth. This fight would not be won with muscle alone. The alien warrior stood in the broken arena, his chest rising like a drum, his pride cut deeper than any wound. He had never faced such resistance, never felt such invisible chains hold his body down. Every battle before had ended in roars of victory, but now silence pressed against him, broken only by the calm breathing of the human standing before him. The crowd whispered, their voices trembling with disbelief. The warrior tightened his grip on his blade, his armor glowing faintly, his body trembling with rage. "This is not real combat," he snarled. "You hide behind unseen tricks, behind coward's magic." But the human did not answer, his eyes steady, his posture firm, his silence more dangerous than any word. It was a silence that cut deeper than the warrior's blade. With a furious roar, the alien lunged forward, faster this time, his body blurring with speed. The arena shook as his blade sliced through the air, each swing heavy enough to shatter steel. But every strike met the same fate, halted by invisible force, bent aside as though the air itself refused to obey him. The human moved with minimal effort, each gesture precise, each glance predicting the alien's next move. The alien swung downward, a blow meant to split the ground. The human raised one hand, and the blade froze inches from his skull. The alien tried to pull it free, but it felt as though mountains weighted down. A spark of fear touched his eyes, quickly hidden beneath another roar. The human spoke at last, his voice quiet, yet carried to every corner of the arena. "You believe strength comes only from muscle, but your power is heavy, loud, and blind." The words pierced deeper than any weapon. The alien's heart raged, but his thoughts cracked with doubt. He pulled back and struck again, his blade sparking with alien energy. The human stepped aside gracefully, the strike missing, his own body untouched. The crowd gasped, watching the alien swing faster, harder, wilder. But the human's calm grew heavier, his movements simple, yet always one step ahead. The alien tried to deceive him, feinting left, spinning right. Yet before the blade even moved, the human's eyes flicked in that direction, already knowing. It was as though the man could see the future, every attack already defeated before it began. The warrior's frustration burned, his roars louder, his pride collapsing under invisible pressure. Sweat rolled beneath his armor, his body slowing, his lungs heavy. But the human stood still, his eyes unbroken, his presence unshaken. The alien felt as though he was not fighting a man, but a force of nature. Something unseen, something unstoppable, something terrifying. The human raised both hands, and the air shimmered. Rocks and fragments of the arena floor lifted, swirling around him like guardians of stone. The alien staggered back, his pride refusing to yield, but his body trembling against the psychic storm. The human's voice cut through the chaos, sharp as lightning. "You fight with muscle, I fight with mind, and mind will always guide muscle." The alien tried one final desperate charge, screaming his fury. But before he could strike, his body froze mid-step, suspended in the air by sheer will. His blade hung uselessly at his side, his eyes wide in disbelief. The human had not touched him, yet he could not move an inch. The crowd gasped as the mighty champion dangled like a puppet on strings. The alien's heart thundered, humiliation drowning his pride. His people had always taught that strength ruled all, that victory belonged to muscle and weapon. But now he saw the lie. Now he felt the truth pressed against his chest like stone. The human lowered his hand, and the alien dropped to his knees, his weapon clattering against the cracked ground. The warrior breathed heavily, his fury now mixed with shame. The crowd stared in silence, afraid to cheer, unable to speak. They too felt the weight of the human's unseen strength, a power that bent not only bodies, but belief itself. The alien looked up, sweat dripping, anger burning in his eyes, but deep within that fire was something else. A question he had never asked before, a doubt his people had never allowed. Was this the true strength of humanity? Or was this only the beginning of something greater? The human said nothing more, only looked down at him with calm, steady eyes. It was not the look of a man who wanted glory, nor the gaze of someone who wanted to humiliate. It was the look of someone who carried a burden, who fought not for pride, but for truth. And that silence struck the alien harder than any blow. The clash of mind and muscle had ended, but in the warrior's chest, a storm began. For the first time in his long life, he was no longer certain of victory, and the battle ahead was no longer against a human, but against his own belief. The arena was no longer filled with cheers, only silence heavy enough to crush the air. The alien warrior knelt on one knee, his breath ragged, his pride bleeding, his blade lying useless on the cracked ground. He had fought countless battles across stars, destroyed armies, crushed champions, but never had he felt so powerless. Before him stood a man with no armor, no weapon, no crown, only eyes that burned with quiet certainty. The human lowered his hand, the air calming, the stones falling back to the earth. Yet the energy around him did not fade. It pulsed like a heartbeat, unseen but undeniable. The alien raised his head, his teeth clenched, his voice breaking through shame. "What are you?" he growled. "What kind of creature bends warriors with invisible chains?" The human's gaze did not waver, his calm voice echoing through the hushed arena. "I am human," he said simply. "What you call chains is thought. What you call tricks is focus. What you call weakness is will." The crowd shivered at his words, for they were not shouted with pride, but spoken with truth. The alien's eyes widened, his chest tightening as the words clawed into him. For generations, his people had whispered of this danger. Legends of humans who could fight without touching, who could break steel with thought, who could crush armies with mind alone. His commanders had laughed at those stories, calling them myths, tales for children. But here, in this broken arena, the myth stood living before him. The alien staggered to his feet, anger burning again, trying to smother the fear inside. "You twist reality with lies," he snarled, gripping his blade though it felt heavier now. "No power can defeat raw strength." The human stepped forward, the ground trembling under unseen waves. "Strength of the body is loud," he said softly, "but strength of the mind is silent. It grows unseen, and it lasts forever." The alien roared, swinging his weapon in fury. But before the blade could descend, his vision blurred, his thoughts cracked. Images filled his head, not his own, but drawn out by the human's will. Memories he had buried, fears he had silenced, now forced into light. He saw himself as a young warrior, standing before his people, swearing that only muscle would carry their race to victory. He saw planets burning, battles won, enemies crushed, but behind every triumph was a shadow he had ignored. The fear of the unknown, the fear of the mind's hidden strength, the fear that one day his blade would mean nothing against the invisible. The alien staggered, clutching his head, his knees trembling. The human's eyes glowed faintly, but his face remained calm. "I do not show you this to shame you," the human's voice whispered. "I show you this because truth cannot be hidden." The alien gasped, sweat pouring, his pride screaming against the weight of revelation. The crowd leaned forward, their own hearts struck by the power they witnessed. They had always believed victory belonged to weapons. Yet here a man had turned a champion into a trembling soul with nothing but thought. Whispers grew louder, fear and awe mixing together. If one human could do this, what could humanity become if they all awakened such power? The alien's blade slipped from his hand, crashing onto the stone floor. For the first time in his life, he doubted his people's teachings. He looked at the human, standing calm, his eyes steady like an endless sea. "What do you want?" the warrior whispered, his voice trembling more than his body. The human's answer was simple, heavy, unshakable. "We want nothing but to be free. We want nothing but to live. We want nothing but respect." The words struck deeper than any blade, for they were not demands of conquest, but truths of survival. And in that moment, the alien felt smaller than he ever had. He wanted to fight again, to roar, to rise, but his body refused. Not because it was broken, but because his spirit was shaking. The truth was no longer a shadow. It stood before him in human form, and no blade, no armor, no roar could silence it. The psychic revelation had broken more than stone. It had cracked the very foundation of what the alien believed. The battle was no longer against a human. It was against the weight of truth. And in that truth, the warrior knew victory would never again belong to muscle alone. The alien warrior's chest heaved as he struggled to stand, his blade shaking in his hand. The crowd watched in silence, every heart beating fast, every eye fixed on the impossible scene. The human stood calm, no armor, no weapon, only his mind burning like fire behind his steady gaze. The air itself seemed to bend around him, heavy with unseen power. The alien's pride screamed louder than his fear. He had been trained from birth to believe muscle was king, that weapons ruled destiny. But now his heart wavered, his spirit cracked. Yet pride is a dangerous chain, and he refused to let it break completely. With a roar, he lifted his blade high, his armor glowing with violent energy. He summoned every fragment of power within him, every memory of victory, every ounce of strength. The arena shook as light poured from the weapon, lightning crawling across the ground. The crowd gasped, shielding their eyes, afraid of what was coming. "This ends now," the alien roared, his voice thunder, his blade blazing like a second sun. He leapt forward, bringing down his ultimate strike, a blow meant not to defeat, but to destroy. The ground split beneath him, stone shattering as he swung with all the fury of his race. This was no simple attack. This was his legacy, his pride, his final weapon. But the human did not run, did not flinch. He closed his eyes, lifted both hands, and the air grew silent. The energy around him thickened, pressing against every stone, every body, every breath. A shield formed, invisible yet stronger than steel, born not from muscle, but from will. The alien's blade struck, the force exploding like a storm. The ground erupted, dust and fire rising high, the walls shaking as if the sky itself would fall. The crowd screamed, unable to see through the chaos, certain the human had been crushed. But when the smoke cleared, a figure still stood, calm, unbroken, untouched. The human's shield glowed faintly, cracks shimmering in the air before sealing themselves again. His eyes opened slowly, calm as still water. The alien's blade was pressed against the shield, but no further. His greatest strike, his ultimate power, had failed. The warrior's arms trembled, his breath broken, his strength drained. He pushed with all his might, veins glowing, armor shaking. But the blade refused to move, as if the universe itself held it back. The human whispered, his voice steady and sharp, "Power without control is nothing." With a flick of his hand, the shield pulsed. The alien was thrown back, crashing into the arena wall with a force that cracked stone. His weapon clattered to the floor, its light dying, its power gone. The once proud champion slumped to the ground, his strength shattered, his spirit broken. The crowd erupted, their voices thundering across the sky. Some cheered, some cried, some simply stared in shock. They had witnessed something no history book had promised, something beyond weapons and strength. They had seen the birth of a new kind of power. The alien coughed, blood on his lips, his armor cracked, his pride torn. He looked at the human standing tall in the center of the arena. No victory dance, no roar, no arrogance, only calm silence. And that silence was more terrifying than defeat itself. "You cannot be real," the alien whispered, his voice weak, trembling. The human's eyes met his, steady, unshaken. "I am as real as the fear inside you," he said softly, "and as real as the truth you try to deny." The words struck harder than any blow, leaving the alien speechless. For the first time in his long life, the alien felt small. His weapon had failed, his strength had failed, his belief had failed, and yet the human stood untouched, not because of muscle, but because of mind. The turning point was here, and the alien knew he had crossed it. He could never return to the lies he once believed. He could never laugh at humans again, never mock their weakness, because he had seen their hidden strength. It was greater than anything his people carried. And in his heart, though he did not want to admit it, respect began to grow. The crowd roared again, their voices shaking the sky. The alien's defeat was not just his own. It was a shift in history. The human had proven that strength was more than muscle. And the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The arena was silent once more, the dust settling slowly. The alien warrior lay against the broken wall, his body trembling, his armor cracked, his pride bleeding heavier than his wounds. The weapon that had once been his glory now lay shattered at his side, its light gone, its strength lost. He had given everything in his final strike, yet the human still stood, calm and unbroken. The crowd looked on with wide eyes, unable to believe what they had witnessed. Their champion, their invincible warrior, the one who had never tasted defeat, now lay humbled before a single human. Some wanted to cheer, some wanted to weep, but most simply stood in awe, their voices caught in their throats. For they knew history had shifted in that very moment. The alien groaned as he tried to rise, his arms heavy, his knees weak. But when he lifted his gaze and saw the human standing before him, calm as a mountain, steady as the stars, his strength faltered. There was no mockery in the human's eyes, no pride, no arrogance, only a calm weight that felt heavier than any blade. It was not victory he saw there, but truth, and it made him bow his head. Slowly, painfully, the alien placed one hand to his chest. He lowered himself to one knee, not forced this time, but willing. The crowd gasped, for never in their lives had they seen their champion kneel to anyone. The sound of his armor striking stone echoed like thunder. "You are not weak," the alien admitted, his voice strained but honest. "You are not prey. You are not fragile. You are something my people have feared in whispers for generations." The human did not answer immediately, his silence stronger than any shout. When he finally spoke, his words carried like fire in the wind. "We do not seek fear," he said softly. "We seek respect. We seek to live, to be free, to be seen as equal." The alien bowed his head deeper, his pride breaking like glass. "For years," he muttered, "we told ourselves that humans were nothing, that your kind was weak, but I see now that your strength is different and far greater than we understood." The words felt like chains shattering, truth finally escaping after centuries of denial. The crowd erupted with voices, their fear turning into thunderous roars. Some shouted in disbelief, others in triumph, but all of them knew the meaning of this moment. Their champion had not only been defeated, he had bent his pride to a single human, and that respect carried more weight than victory itself. The alien raised his head slowly, his eyes still fierce, but no longer blinded by arrogance. He looked at the human and said, "My people will not believe this easily. They will deny it. They will rage. But I have seen with my own eyes, and I cannot deny what is true." The human stepped closer, his presence filling the broken arena with calm power. "Truth spreads, even when hidden," he said, "and once seen, it cannot be unseen." The alien lowered his eyes, the fire in his chest now mixed with something unfamiliar. It was not shame, nor was it hatred. It was respect, heavy and undeniable. For the first time in his long life, he had looked upon another being and seen not weakness, but a mirror of strength in another form. It humbled him more than defeat ever could. The crowd roared again, the sound carrying beyond the arena, beyond the city, beyond the world. Every ear that heard it would know, every heart that felt it would remember. A human had faced the strongest warrior of the stars, and had not only survived, but earned respect. And that respect was a seed, one that would grow across the galaxy. The alien's voice grew softer, almost weary. Human, you have broken more than my body. You have broken the walls of my belief. He placed his hand once more to his chest, a gesture of honor in his people's way. You have earned my respect, and with it my oath. The human nodded slightly, not smiling, not boasting, for he knew this was not the end of a fight, but the beginning of something far greater. Respect had been earned, but what came after would decide the fate of many worlds. And in that silence, heavy with meaning, the crowd felt the weight of history pressing upon them. The champion of the stars had bowed, and humanity, once mocked as weak, now stood taller than ever before. The arena floor was cracked and broken, yet within that ruin stood the image of something greater than battle. The alien warrior remained on one knee, his pride surrendered, his voice heavy with respect. The human stood before him, calm and silent, his presence alone enough to quiet the storm of voices echoing around the arena. Every eye, human and alien alike, was fixed on this single moment. The alien lifted his head, his breath still ragged, but his spirit changed. He had come to crush, to dominate, to prove superiority. Yet he found something he could not conquer. He found strength that came not from weapons or muscle, but from mind and will. And in that discovery, his arrogance dissolved into something unfamiliar. Human, he spoke at last, his voice echoing like gravel against stone. You have shown me what no blade, no army, no battle ever could. He placed his hand upon his chest again, his gesture of oath and honor. From this day, I will not see your kind as weak, for you have earned my respect. The human nodded slowly, his gaze steady, his voice calm. We do not seek worship. We do not seek chains. We only ask to walk as equals. The words rang through the air, and even those who once doubted felt their hearts moved. For they carried not pride, but truth, and truth carried weight heavier than steel. The alien's eyes flickered with conflict, but then with clarity. My people will not accept this easily, he admitted. They will resist, they will rage, they will deny, but I will speak what I have seen, and I will stand by it. The human answered simply, his words sharp as fire. Truth cannot be buried. Even if it is hated, it will grow, it will spread, and one day, it will change everything. The crowd erupted, their roars shaking the sky. What had begun as a battle to prove weakness had ended in something far greater. This was no longer a contest of strength. It was the birth of understanding. And though the scars of the arena would remain, so too would the memory of this day. The alien warrior rose to his feet, standing tall though wounded. He extended his arm, his hand open not in attack, but in unity. The human looked at the gesture, then placed his hand upon the alien's. It was a simple act, yet it carried the weight of centuries. The arena thundered with voices, cheers, cries, disbelief, awe. But beneath it all was a single truth. The old way had cracked, the new way had begun. An alliance born not from treaties or politics, but from battle, respect, and revelation. And it was stronger than any chain of conquest. The alien spoke again, his voice now steadier. My people feared this day, feared the awakening of the human mind. Now I see why, and I no longer fear it. The human replied, calm but firm. Fear divides, respect unites. Let this be the first step, not the last. The two stood side by side, human and alien, once enemies, now bound by something greater. The crowd could feel it, the shift in history, the spark of something that would spread beyond the walls of the arena, beyond the skies, beyond the stars. For when respect is earned, fear begins to fade, and in its place, new paths open. Paths of alliance, paths of strength, paths of hope. The alien lowered his head once more, but this time not in defeat. This was acceptance, this was acknowledgement, this was the birth of trust. He turned to the human and declared, "From this day, I will call you not enemy, but ally, not prey, but equal." The human did not smile, for he knew the road ahead was not easy, but his voice carried the weight of all humanity as he answered, "Then let us walk forward, not as conqueror and conquered, but as beings who finally understand." And those words became the stone on which a new future was built. The battle was over. The war of beliefs had shifted. The alien warrior had bowed. The human had risen. And together they had forged something greater than victory. A new alliance had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same again.